Hello, welcome to the Tabletop Sports Network, the home of T-Sports. Always hate that. That's my first time saying it, but I already hate it. Hello, welcome to the show. My name's Rob. I'm joined by Ishik, Neil, and Tom, and they're going to say hello individually now. Hello, Ishik. How are you?
I'm good. How about you guys?
Hello, I'm Tom.
Great, thank you. There's also Tom. Tom's in the house. Hey, Tom.
Hello, guys. How is things going?
It's great. And also Neil. This is Neil.
Hello, one and all.
So we'd all like to introduce ourselves, but I think you three are the people that people are going to want to listen and talk to. So if you guys want to kick off and introduce yourselves.
Well, let's keep the same order, I guess. My name is Ishik. I am essentially the Turkish captain of the WTC 40K team, and I've been in the wargaming for around 10 years or so, and I'm one of the tournament organizers of the WTC. And I like talking about things more than doing anything about them. Yes, that seems about right.
Yes, I'm Tom. I'm Belgian. I'm also a big gamer. I've been into this game for the last 20 years. And I'm also one of the organizers of the WTC, heavily involved with the rules pack writing and the FAQs and stuff. And yeah, this gaming community has just gotten wind of me and got onto me, and I just can't stop doing stuff around the WTC because it's so much fun to create a different kind of environment where people can play in an international setting. So that's cool. That's why I'm here, basically.
And hi, I'm Neil. I've been playing 40k since Rogue Trader, about 25 years now. Been going to the ETC since 2009 as a player, and in 2014 I became the head referee, which I've sort of kept that role ever since.
Yeah, so you three are the organisers of the WTC for 40k, so the World Team Championships for 40k, which was meant to happen this summer, obviously, and hasn't happened this summer, but is gonna happen next year, right?
Yeah, we are still having it the same place we declared for 2020, which is Leoben, Austria. We just moved it by a year into the future.
And what is the WTC for first time listeners to the show?
So WTC is like an international team tournament that focuses heavily on the team play. So you don't play for yourself, but you play together with your team. So it's like 8 individual matches into a team that make up like a team score. And yeah, in the end, we crown a world champion. That's basically what it is. So yeah, we have teams from around 30 different countries attending. We are growing steadily each year. We have like 40 people or 40 teams actually from 40 different countries interested in joining. So we now have some Asian teams that are interested in coming. So it looks like it's going to grow into like a very global, yeah, kind of event, which is what we're aiming for, of course. So that's really nice.
Could you give me some history on the WTC?
Yeah.
Like, how long has it been going? How many teams? How did it start, sort of thing?
Yeah, so it started in 2006 because basically the Polish community was tired of playing amongst itself. So the Polish have a very strong competitive environment. They have like more than 2 or 3 tournaments every weekend, back in the day at least. And yeah, they were just tired of always playing the same Polish guys, so they decided to invite like their peers from abroad. I think the first ETC back then was just a fantasy, but the second year that they held it, there was also a 40k component, and I think there was like 8 teams that year. And yeah, they decided to go with it and like have it travel to different locations, so they could have different people organizing it, so it wasn't always the same guys who did it. And yeah, it just grew from there into the beast it is today. So it just started very small with some people inviting some guys on some forums, because back in the day the internet was not so widespread as now. So they just started communicating through some forums, and yeah, it took off quite nicely, and here we are today.
Yeah.
And what roles do you... Oh, sorry, Neil, after you.
I was going to say as well, obviously, previously the ETC has been a multi-system event, but last year the 40k community like all the teams, the captains, everyone's been involved in ETC for many, many years, took the decision almost unanimously to break away and do our own thing, which is what the WTC is. It's just the purely 40k side of the team championships. So this year would have been our first year going alone. Unfortunately, COVID happened. But next year, we're keen to do it. All the teams are still very much involved and keen as well. So just looking forward to going for, creating our own path just for 40k and just focusing 100% on what 40k players want.
And what role do you three play in the organisation and running of the WTC?
Well, my personal role is trying to keep the schedule and trying to keep the schedule throughout the year after year, designing the terrain and making things work. It's the banal, boring job. I don't personally do the exciting things. That's for Neil and Tom, but I simply keep the machine working.
Yeah, so we are three different people with three different characters, and we kind of found each other along the way, I think. We each were involved with the WTC or the ETC for years, but then we kind of grew into our roles, I think, in a very organic way. And we each have our strong suits, and I think we feed off each other very nicely. Like Neil is the one who keeps it in check a little bit. It's clear that Aishik is a workhorse of us three. He's doing mainly all the background work, where I'm more the structuring and the organizational part. Um, yeah, so I think we make a nice team, and I think between the three of us we can make the event better. We think it's already obvious from the stuff we've done. So yeah, that's basically what we do, what our roles are.
Neil?
Yeah, totally agree. I mean, when it comes to sort of organising the event, Ishik and Tom take a lot of lead there. It's sort of their strengths, project management and such like. And then when it comes to the ETC, like the actual WTC, the week of the event itself, that's more where I sort of step in. My sort of I'm very good people skills, being sort of involved heavily with rugby, both as a player and like at organizational level, even at like European level, and also teacher. So I just sort of use those people skills to sort of manage the herd the cats, manage people, and just keep the event running smoothly as possible during the week itself.
You should see
fantastic.
Neil. You should see Neil like managing players. It's a true art. Like how
Is
I
it
manage.
hard? Oh, go on,
If you ever seen a rugby game and ever seen like Nigel Owens or any really good rugby referee, how they manage rugby players when the rugby players are getting a bit upset with each other, that's exactly how I do it.
Do all the players have to call you sir?
No, but they can't shout at me.
that seems like a solid
Yeah.
role.
This isn't football. I've actually said that to someone before.
And I guess if anyone is interested in who I am, my name is Rob. And I guess the next segment that we're going to talk about is announcing that with the launch of the WTC this year, you guys had reached out to start to integrate with some partners and to expand and improve what you guys were planning to do this year. So I'll let you guys do that if you guys are interested.
Yeah, so one of the things that we're looking for is, of course, to professionalize the event a little bit. I mean, we look keenly to events like Adepticon and LVO and stuff, and the way they're organized professionally. In the past, these tournaments are always had like an amateurish level. At least it was perceived that way, and it was also, admittedly, very amateurish on the organizational part due to different factors. So that's one of the reasons we wanted to split, is because we wanted to step up our game. And in order to do that, of course, it's nice to work with some partners that elevate the event. So yeah, one of course is Tabletops Network. So yeah, I don't know if you want to talk about what you're going to do for us, or if you want to quickly have me say what you're on board for.
I mean, yeah, you could say. I mean, one of the key elements for me, real quickly, if you guys have never met me before, Rob, I run the Honest Wargamer, but I also set up Warhammer Live, so I did all of the live coverage for Games Workshop as well. And effectively, my mission statement as a person, and through the Tabletop Sports Network, which is our professional brand, is to deliver competitive wargaming in the very best way, both entertainment and also information in the best way that we can. And I've been working at it now for about 4 years, which isn't long, I guess, but it's also not. It's the longest anyone has, so I guess. And I feel incredibly honoured that you guys approached me and we were able to decide to work together. Because I think what you guys do is wonderful, and I was really very excited for this year. So it's a bit disappointing, but next year we're going to crush it, which is going to be really fun.
Nice. So yeah, Rob is on board to provide us with streaming at the event. So in the past, the WTC was always seen as like a kind of elitist kind of tournament where it's difficult to get info going from the tournament to people that are following at home. So they always are waiting on their hunger, so to speak, to learn from the event. So I think if you can get streaming going there where they can follow live what's going on at the tables, that will help them connect a bit with our event, because I think that's a bit of an issue we had in the past, that people could not connect to the event because it was like far from their bed show. So that's where you come in, hopefully to bridge that gap at least a little bit, if not by a lot. And then
I'm hoping by a lot.
yeah, we're counting on it. So I think that will happen as well easily with the way you guys are creating content the way you are. So yeah,
and it's a unique challenge. The matches of 8 players versus each other. English is the language of the tournament, but not necessarily the language of everyone attending. It's honestly a very fun and exciting challenge to show that. But also, I mean, it's the world championships of 40k. So why wouldn't you be thrilled to be involved and excited to do that, right? So looking forward to it massively. But also this podcast and future podcasts is going to be a way people are going to be able to get some eyes and ears and an insight into that environment as well, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's one of the aims of this podcast, actually. But more on that later. So we can talk about more the other partners. So one of them is the Army Painter. They've been involved with the WTC or the ETC for a while. They're one of our main sponsors in that they provide us with all the trophies at the event. So traditionally, we don't really have prizes or cash prizes or something going out, and they provide us with medals that we can give to the winning teams, and also some spot prizes for best painted and stuff. So they've been a great partner to the year. So we're just gonna continue on with them. There's no reason not to. And then traditionally as well, our tournament has run a tournament software called Tourney Keeper. But yeah, the site or software is not really being maintained or developed as we go, and yeah, the needs of the community are a bit changing. So we decided to partner up with Down on the Pairing guys, which also now kind of muted with BCP, the BCP app that everybody knows. So also there, I think it's a big step up in terms of what we can do and what we can provide for our attendees in terms of statistics and ease of functionality for subscribing and stuff like that. Maybe even uploading lists and making an online list repository or something that can all be automated through these guys. So that's great looking forward. And then, of course, one of the partners that will not come as a surprise to anybody is Wayland Yutani Terrains, which is the company that Aishik set up a few years ago at ETC back then in Croatia, because yeah, there was really an issue with our terrain standards, and Ishik decided to take the reins on that and just step up the game and just make terrain himself. He made it with like kind of a very heavy plastic art printed kind of thing, which just made a lot of sense at the time, and is becoming one of the standards at the events right now that everybody's looking forward to, like easy ready-made terrain that looks good and is easy to store and to transport. And yeah, Aishik is leading heavily on that, and it's great to have a partner like that we can, with the shifting needs of the tournament, just count on him just providing what we need on a very very easy basis, and also on a very quick basis, because sometimes we need to adapt quickly, like with 9th edition now. So that's awesome. So those are basically the partners. I think in the coming weeks, months, and years, we will expand on those a little, but those are the most important ones right now that are helping us to make just a better event. So we're happy to have them on board.
happy to be on board, especially as we look towards the future of the WTC next year and WTCs in the future, right? So, like with COVID, obviously, this year was planned to be in Austria. What are the plans for next year?
Next year will be in Austria again. We decided it was just very expedient just to roll over everything to next year, because when we originally only had about 6 months between choosing Austria, which we did in around February, until August. It had been very stressful this year to obviously actually get the event done. So having an extra year to plan, prepare, and get everything set in place is a massive advantage. So for that reason, and also because the teams voted for Austria, they want to go there. So you want to obviously give them that opportunity. And the guys in Austria themselves are really, really keyed up to do this. They're really passionate about running the WTC. So for everybody involved, it's made sense just to roll it over to next year. So it will be in Leuven as well, same location. It'll be the same date. The only thing that might potentially change is that there may be a new venue, because the local government is actually building a conference centre, an arena, which should be opened next year. So we might be able to obviously move to an even better venue than the one we originally had. But otherwise, there'll be sort of no change. What happened this year, what should happen this year, will just happen next year instead. And then going forwards, obviously we're going to want to then start getting bids in for people interested in hosting the event in 2022. And we're going to go out with information about what our requirements are, what we expect venues to be able to offer, hosts to be able to offer. We'll be doing that towards the end of this year. So that way we'll always be working a year in advance of the event. So we can get the bids done by the end of this year, January next year. Then we have over a year for 2022, and it just then starts rolling forwards.
I have a question about that, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Is it very much like the Olympics, and I can bribe you to get a bid, or are you guys unwilling to take bribes?
Yes.
No, we're all willing to take bribes, but at the end of the day, we're not actually going to do anything about them. We're just going to take the money and then carry on doing what we think is the best thing anyway.
Good. That seems like a big positive.
Yeah, a word of advice.
You can pay us all you want, but we won't change our minds.
Yeah, a word of advice to everybody out there that wants to bribe us. You can bribe us, of course, but we'll still have the captain's vote afterwards. So
yeah, and I think that's actually a very important thing that we've not mentioned. What makes the WTC, I would say, completely unique in the competitive 40k landscape is that it is not me, Ishik, and Tom as TOs who decide everything. It is the captains, it is the teams, the players who come to the event year in, year out. They're the ones that make the decisions. We steer the ship and sort of guide it past obvious danger and make sure he's going the right direction. But things like the rule, like the format of the event, the rules used, the missions used, is Forge World allowed or not, how many players in the team, all these things, like the rules pack of the event, that is 100% decided by the people who play in the event. So
is that really difficult to manage for you guys?
It is. It requires management, but at the end of the day, I think it's what makes the event so unique and what makes people so passionate about it. Because sure, not everyone's going to agree, but the majority of people want this thing to happen, want something to happen a certain way, and everyone else gets behind that decision. And because every party, every person playing the event has the opportunity to mold the event, I think it just creates much more interaction that way.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's become the DNA of the WTC, actually, this player involvement. So if you would get rid of that, I think it would change the event altogether. So
yeah, especially considering it's a global event, and it's interesting to see how people from different countries want to see in their event. So it's always like usually there is some compromise, but it's like how a country wants X, the other one wants Y, and it's interesting to see how different countries do different things.
Yeah. So like Tom said, you can bribe me, Ishik, and Tom as much as you want, but unless you're bribing all the captains and players as well, you're not going to be able to get anything.
Well, but all the money that gets made, I assume you guys run off with it and have a holiday and party afterwards.
We have our own private island. Don't you know?
Like Fire Festival.
Just Ishik, let's be clear about that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, historically, any profits made at the ETC were kept by the local hosts. One of the
Right.
things we said that we want to change is that we're going to create an we're going to invest the money back into the WTC. So one of those things is create a non-profit organisation, of which myself, Ishik, and Tom will obviously be on that organisation. And then we can use, so we will see the profits, some of the profits this year will go towards that. And then we can use the money we make to invest in the infrastructure for the event. So we can invest in mats, gaming mats for all the tables. We can invest in terrain as well. So that way, wherever the event goes, the teams arriving, the players arriving know that they're going to be getting what mats they're playing on, the terrain they're playing on, that's all going to be up to standard. Which great, because previously you would show up to a venue, you'd show up to a country to play, and sometimes you'd have no clue what the quality of terrain or the quality like the gaming materials provided would be. And it's been cases in the past of terrain that's wildly unusable, boards that aren't even painted, and more besides. So
But that's not to cast it in a bad light. That's just, I mean, that obviously doesn't sound great. But I guess what you guys are effectively doing as an organisation is saying someone has to take responsibility for this year in, year out. Like, it's long-term project planning, and it needs some real focus. You can't just keep giving it to different people every year. That seems to make loads of sense.
Yeah, that's it exactly. And to do that, we also want to sort of like own an infrastructure that we can use, and that infrastructure requires money, and that's the profits from WTC over the coming years will go into that. And then another thing we can then do is say somebody then wants to run a big team event in their country, they don't have enough mats or whatever, they can always rent them off us.
And then that money can get put back in. Yeah.
Exactly, and it becomes sort of like it is the WTC, we steer it, but it's a community-owned thing, and it feeds back into the wider community.
Yeah, it's brilliant. I think that's definitely needed because it's a huge undertaking. One I don't even actually understand. Not just putting on a competition, but putting on a competition for for at an international level. So people are going to need to learn more about like what is going to happen on the road to WTC 2021. Get that right. And so that's why we're talking and what's happening now, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've sort of like me, Tom, and Ishika talked for a while that we feel that one, the WTC needs to get more exposure. It is a massive event in terms of players we draw from all different countries around the world, and the numbers of players that attend. But a lot of people don't know about it, don't even know what it's about. So one of the things is obviously partnering with you, Rob, with TSN, to get that media exposure. And another thing we've thought about doing, and we're now going to do, is actually have a podcast as well, which will be the WTC Squadcast, because we think there's a need and a place for a podcast that talks about our event and talks about competitive 40k from a team perspective as well. Because all the podcasts out there are competitive, they focus on single player events, and that very sort of single player 40k team player, when you play as a team, is very, very different. The team dynamic changes the experience entirely, and so we want to sort of we feel that's a niche that we can focus in on, as well as bring in people from this diverse community we have across the world, these players we know from all over the world, bring them in to talk to them about what goes on in their community, in their country, and just sort of like really showcase sort of the global aspect of our hobby.
So really, you want it to become like a focal community point for like international 40k, like showcase captains and communities from their countries and then how that's also. I mean, for me, I know one of the things that's super fascinating is the tactical element and how playing teams of 8 and how they prep. But I also know that you guys have got some really great stories from ETCs, WTCs of the past, and the dedication that some of these teams put into it, which really haven't seen the light of day. Those stories, right?
Yeah, that's it. I mean, there are podcasts out there that do coverage of the WTC and or other team events, but the coverage is sporadic, or it's, we'll say, misinformed. Not as negativity, but it's because the podcast covering it haven't been there, aren't involved themselves. So that's where we feel we're primarily placed to do that.
That seems to be super fair. And so when's the launch of the Squadcast? When can I listen to the first show? That's the real question.
So that depends a bit on the start of ninth edition. We thought ninth edition was a good start for us to start talking about how it will affect like our team play with the new rules and whatnot. So depends when ninth will get released, but I think like 1 or 2 weeks after we can have a first kind of run at things.
It seems like a good time, right? Because I mean, there's a lot of and I'm not throwing any shade, everyone in the world. I just saw a video yesterday was how to prep your army for ninth edition. I was like, well, none of us know the rules, so you must be either a psychic or a genius.
I don't know. Maybe you can whisper sweet nothings into your army so they'll be in prime condition for the new edition.
Maybe it's just a practice dice rolling. I'm not 100% certain, but any of those work.
Don't you have your special copy of Stedel dice? Like how to throw Stedel dice? From several.
I haven't got that book yet. No, maybe that's why I've been doing so terribly.
Yeah.
I think that's the answer.
It's a book for everybody.
So what can people expect to hear about in the podcast? I think.
Well, they can, like we mentioned before, we'll first analyze everything from the team aspect because that's not a thing that happens too much in the internet and around the 40k coverage these days. It's all about more single player and how to personally prepare for a tournament. Our main focus will be about the teams and how they prepare, and then we'll interview and have guests that have attended from many different countries, from many different places that are not known maybe to our listeners. These will be captains from other nations, players that have attended from in different countries that as mercenaries. So our main focus will be the team aspect because it's a much different thing than attending a tournament as a single person. You'll be going there and you'll be doing it for the team, not for yourself, which adds a lot.
Yeah, I think Tom Neal, anything you'd like to add to that?
No, yeah, that's the gist of it a little bit. So yeah, we will just go a bit deeper, deep dive a little bit deeper about what it means to be on a team and how it affects like being involved in like a very unique tournament like ours. Yeah, so it's the world's biggest international competitive 40k team tournament, and it's a very unique setting with a lot of different aspects. So team selection, army selection, stress management, all those things will come on the podcast to see how it.
We'll
Sorry,
also
my dog.
share. I'll take it over. We'll also share like the funny stories because it has been an event that has run over a decade. Like the first 40k event was in 2007, and there are some people who have attended all of them, and they have many great stories about what they did, how other people acted. It's the after parties, before parties, the let's say the drama that happened, or like many great friendships that formed from just meeting for a common goal every year after year. Most of the people who have attended WTC are friends at this point, and it's amazing to have the chance to meet people from across 30 countries all coming together for one big tournament.
I think also like one of the things that is really exciting for me is with the idea that like when doing the coverage next year, I don't want the audience or I don't want the people at home to go into the situation cold, right? You know, I want them to understand maybe if not what each individual player or team captain is like for the teams. You know, I want to get some sort of like idea of who the tough armies, like who the tough players or teams are going to be, you know, like or who's got the fiery temperament, or who are the cool and calculating team, you know, and developing those interviews with those team captains and players and learning about what their local community is like. I know you guys were sharing some anecdotes with me off air that several of the teams are scary in their level of preparation, right? Like you
Yeah.
and they're your hot picks.
Oh yeah, especially like the difference between a country's understanding of the tournament is also like, interesting. Some just look at it as a competitive tabletop tournament. Others look at it as a week of fun, and the contrast is amazing. It's like some people's first question will be, "What kind of tables are we going to play on?" The other team will ask, "What kind of beer are they serving?" So
Those are the two broad aspects, yeah, the opposite ends, let's say, of our attendees, yeah. But that's what makes it
I-
interesting. Like a lot of the teams take it very very seriously by now. It's been running for 14 years, so they know what it is. They know what it means to be there to represent their country. Some take it very very seriously. Like just to give an example, the Polish sometimes take a week off as a team before the event starts, just to practice for a week straight against all the lists from all the other top countries. So
yeah,
I don't know
they
about you. To me, that sounds really excessive, and I could not explain it at home to my wife. But some some teams really do that and go to that lengths just to have the upper edge and to win this thing. So those are great stories, I think, and those are great aspects to dive into. Like, what drives them to do that? Is it really that important to have a game of toy soldiers that you can say like, look, I became the world champion?
yeah.
well, oh, go on. That's someone
Yeah,
else
some
after you.
countries like have set up their schedules around the WTC. So no tournament happens after the list submission because they want their all of their playing time to be ready for practice. And some countries just ask you a week before, okay, so when are we supposed to submit the list? I've been sort of busy with some other stuff and I don't have enough players. So it's like, wait, are you just coming here for a vacation? And they literally answer, yes, I'm just here for a vacation. That's the fun part, for at least for them.
But that said, though, like it's fair to say that a lot of 40k coverage has a very definitive North American like bias to it, maybe to a degree. I feel that that's the case. I'm not sure if you guys agree with that.
100%.
Um,
True.
and I think, but I also know that there are some huge non-English language YouTube channels and Twitch channels for Warhammer 40,000 in other countries as well. And I've been looking at some of those, and I think number one, seeing those pieces of media, but also those groups integrating into the larger community, or maybe the whole larger community paying attention to those groups, would be very very exciting. And I also think, the concept of being the world champion is actually a really cool one. So as more eyes get onto the prize, that more people might focus on taking it seriously, or maybe not. Maybe they'll still just drink just as much. I'm not sure.
There will always be those odd teams that are just there for the beers and the laughs, but I think over the years you can clearly see that a lot of teams are taking it way more seriously. I mean, speaking from the Belgian side, I can tell you that it has become a lot more professional since the very beginning. So it's something that's very obvious from across all the teams.
Yeah, every team has been practicing slightly earlier, and putting in slightly more effort year after year, and it shows. Like a country that a player might have disregarded a few years prior might be making a move for the top three, like suddenly because the captain comes in just at the right time. Like Australians are a great example of that. They were, not to deride them or anything. They were not the top teams. They were never a top contender. But last year they missed third place by secondary points, and now they're even more fired up to just try even more to make the move to be the champions.
Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, and I think it's important. The reason I bring up the North American bias to a degree is the Americans did come over and they won one once. Was that 2 years ago?
In
Is that right?
2018 in Croatia, yeah.
But that's the only one they've won.
That's the only one they won, yeah. And that's also
That's
something
the only one.
something that I did a few weeks ago is I went through the history and like I made like a sort of a ranking over the years just to see where we end up. And it's actually funny that everybody expects the Americans, since there's so much focus on the American side of things, to be the team on top. But actually, if you look across the history, they're only in fifth place. So there's four other teams that are arguably stronger at the game than they are, at least in a team competition. So I think that's also something we can focus on a bit and showcase that in other countries where people don't expect it from, like Sweden has a very strong showing over the years, like the Germans, the Russians, the French. So just to showcase that side of things, because nobody talks about them or about those kind of communities or those kind of players, but they're really, really strong at the game. So that's something that I would like to bring as well to our podcast to make people aware of that there are really great players in those parts of the world.
I think that's the thing I'm most excited about finding out. A deep dive. Not only like this team is good, but like this guy on this team is good. I think there's especially when that good player who we don't know much about from, let's say, a team like Russia, and then they're up against a very media focused individual from, let's say, someone like Team USA. I think that would be one of those tables to do coverage of, which would be so exciting because you'd be like, actually, this is a titanic match that you wouldn't often see even at a singles event, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
true. And
and
that's
one. Sorry, go on, Tom.
yeah. So one of the things that I spoke to the American captain the first year they came, Space Curves, Ben Molly, and they were actually very surprised at the level of play. Actually, they didn't expect that they would have such fierce competition here, and it's something that's echoed throughout the years is that the level has gone up, of course, and all the big players are here. You know, you have Scary from Canada, you have Sean Naden from America, Nick Nanavari, Brad Chester, Tony Kopak. All the big players are here, but the same goes for all the other countries. So that's something that's really nice. And if you ask any of those big players, like what is one of the incentive for them to come back or try to make their team each year, is because there's nothing quite like it to play with some of your peers that you will never meet in like a regular tournament, or almost never, because more and more people are traveling to the big events in the States, of course. So there's some intermingling, but for the most part, you don't get the chance to play against like an Alexander Kontakov, the Russian captain, like 2 or 3 times per year. So going to our event is one of the big chances you have to meet and play players of that caliber, which is one of the big incentives, I think, and it's one of the main assets of our tournament. I think that we really have a grouping of the strongest players in the world.
So, would it be fair to say that from the podcast, so from WTC Squadcast, you're basically going to get what you would get, like a singles, like for a singles podcast, I guess. When new rules come out, or maybe new tomes, how that would affect the meta, but more importantly, how that would affect the team meta, which is wildly different to how it would affect the individual game, right?
Yep.
I think that's an interesting element of being able to do like book reviews, or even just talking about a new book and where it lands in that team setup, right?
Yeah, exactly. We won't do like these regular reviews to say like, hey, this combo is good or that thing is good. No, we'll really focus on what it means for like the team play, and like, is this army good? Like taking into account the pairings, all these things. So because that's one of the aspects that we found was never really touched on in other podcasts. So that's something we really want to focus on and build upon to like bring that information to a bigger crowd and see where it lands.
And there are also other major team tournaments like that happen around the world that I definitely don't know of. Like, could you guys give me some examples of some big 40k tournaments that I might never have heard of?
Yeah, for example, there is the Belgian Team Championships in February in Belgium. There's the Winter Championship in Croatia in November, usually, hopefully this year as well. And there are several others there is one in Sweden called TTT in October. That's going to happen this year as well. That's Neil organizing it. And there are several other tournaments all across Europe, and there's American Team Championships as well in the USA. Uh, Canhammer Team Tournament, if I remember correctly. The Met Cup is a thing. We'll, I'm sure we can get into even more detail, but it's an undiscovered aspect, the international team tournament circuit, that usually doesn't come up because it's hard to join all of them, so nobody mentions the ones they don't attend.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's the key part. Like, is integrating the news from those tournaments into the wider community as well. I think would be interesting, because also I don't know if team stats actually makes it into regular like 40k stats. For the guys from the 40k stats center, because I'm assuming because of the pairing process, that really throws off. Does that throw off how you would judge the stats, or not really?
Well, the one important thing of the tournament is that even if you're a good player, you might go into a match knowing that you will most likely lose. So I'm not sure how the 40k stats guide do their thing, but even the best players might lose all their games in WTC because they are they are the good players. They're always thrown first to the wolves essentially to just do their best. But that's why we keep the stats usually on a team level and not on a player level, because most of the usually the team who has won the event doesn't have any of the top scorers when it comes to individual ranking. They usually start around mid there. Everybody did a great job, nobody did the best job, but that's how you win the tournament.
Yeah, so I think if you ask the Falcon like if there's any value to the data that comes out of our tournament, he would say no, because it's so skewed. I mean, like there's this pairing aspect where you can, like, you put on a defender and then you get two attackers against it, so you will get like paper rock scissors kind of matchups where the result is kind of set. At least it was like that in the past. We have to see how it is with Ninth, of course. But I think the Falcon would not be very happy to take those things into his stats. I mean, of course, it's a result that was obtained, but it's something that was, let's say, it put into place.
Manufactured.
Yeah, manufactured. Yeah, really. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
so I don't think there's lots of value to these stats. You can glean a lot
No,
of
but
info from them, like how people build their lists and how people do in general. Like it's like Ashik says, like if you look at it on average, these guys almost never score like over 100 points, but they all have like between 60 and 90 points, so they don't lose too many points over the course of the games they play. So, and that actually makes a winning team, is that they have a strong team without really playing to the let's say the
Yeah, a great player in WTC is not the player who has won their match 20 in, like full to zero. In our case, it was 20 points in total. The 20 points were shared. A great player would be the one you send to the match, lose hope, thinking that he will lose 0-20, but then he'll be able to eke out 2 or 3 points, giving the team the victory. So it's like you might have find the best players, at least by our regard, at the bottom of the rankings, but just because of the few points they got, that pushed their team over the line for the victory and might have become the champions thanks to essentially 1 or 2 points that have been impossible for the regular player, but was able to be acquired because the player was exceptional.
I actually think that's really, really fascinating. Like, honestly, it is, because then also you can take into account faction diversity. So obviously, over those 8 teams, no one can repeat a faction. That's normally the case, right? So, like, I think it would be super interesting to be like, well, of the 40 teams attending the WTC, or the 30 teams attending the Kamahama team tournament, the composition looked more like this. There was always these 3 armies, and then there was some variance beyond that. And I think team events could potentially even have their own version of stats, and integration and how that works. I know that's something that we were planning for the coverage this year, and it'll be exciting to look into that next year as well. And also, it'll be fun to talk on the podcast and learn about how to build teams, how to structure teams. And do you think that there's a good resource out there for that at the minute, or are you guys hoping that we can bring that to the front?
Yeah, so I think that's one of the things that are lacking, is that there's really no platform for these kind of team events. Like Ashik said before, is you don't really hear about them. I think the 40k Stat Center guys started a bit like with putting more exposure on like European side of the tournament scene, but yeah, I don't think there's any exposure on that, and then the stats are an exponent of that. So there's really nothing in place at the moment. So it's something really that's lacking, I think.
Yeah, one thing we can do is like bring light to how the armies work, and it's because like no team repeats the list. It might have been, for example, a 2,000 point list, but and 1,500 point might have been repeated across many teams, but the 500 point remaining part would be the player's discretion, and they will put in something unique, and that might make it look bad in a single setting, but it will make the difference when you consider the pairing process, the different terrain setups, or the different deployments in specific rounds, and that's what makes the event unique. You cannot analyze the lists in vacuum. You have to look at it through the team lens, and essentially everything in our tournament has to be considered through the team lens. Otherwise, it would make no sense.
Yeah, and I think
I think. Go on, Tom.
yeah,
After
I
you.
think building up like these stats is a very difficult thing to do because, like, yeah, there's the ATC, then the Belgian Team Championships, the Winter Team Championships, and the WTC. Like, if you pull all those together, you don't really have a lot of data.
Hmm.
So also every tournament might be a bit different in terms of like how they pair, how team makeup is. Like if you have a 4-man team or an 8-man team, it makes a wide difference, I think. So I don't know how much these stats would all make sense in the end. So I think that's a very difficult thing to do, actually.
So one of the things that I know, having come into a conversation with you guys quite regularly, is that sometimes, and I know this of myself as well, sometimes we can all accidentally forget that we know more than other people. And I don't mean that in a kind of arrogant way. What I mean by that is sometimes we can forget to explain the basics. So I think we'd all be really excited in people getting in touch with us, asking for show ideas and stuff that we might think is fairly obvious, but people might want explaining out. So I think you guys you wouldn't mind having people ask us for content and to get in touch with us, right?
Of
Yeah, no.
course.
So if anybody out there has any idea of content we should touch on or something they want to know about, yeah, please just hit us up on Facebook. I think most people that are into competitive 40k can find me, Neil, or Aishik very easy. There's also the WTC Facebook page, of course, so they can get in touch quite easily. So we would love to get that kind of interaction going. And if there's something you want to hear about, yeah, just hit us up.
Yeah, perfect. There's also the WTC site as well, worldteamchampionships.com.
Well, the
As a way
championship.com, not the
championship.
yeah.
Sorry, just
Well, because that
yeah.
is
So
it's a different thing. That one, the second one's a different.
okay. And of course, I'll include all of those links in the show notes below. So wherever you might be watching this, you can go and click through and do that. It's been a lovely talking to you guys.
Same
Thank
here.
you. I'm looking forward to doing more in the future. Have you got any things that you think we might have missed in our first go through?
I think we hit every important point that we can.
Yeah, same.
Neil?
Yeah, I think Neil is AFK.
Oh,
Taking care of the little one.
I mean, his little one is only, what, 4 days old?
I think 3.
That's pretty cool. All right, well, it's been lovely, and like the guys are saying, if you would like to get in touch, please do. Also, there will be we'll bring more information when we plan to put a schedule out and what the subjects will be, and I hope everyone enjoys this. So it's been lovely talking to you guys, and hopefully we'll talk to you again soon. Have a nice day.
Have a
Cheers,
nice
Rob.
day. Have a
Cheers,
nice
Rob.
day. Have a
Cheers,
nice
Rob.
day. Have a
Cheers,
nice
Rob.
day. Have a
Cheers,
nice
Rob.
day.